There was no sign that the Baker family's home would become the centre of a homicide investigation. The street was quiet. Children were outside enjoying the summer afternoon. Cars moved through the Belforest community near Daphne, Alabama, like they did every other Sunday. Neighbours carried on with their routines. Nothing appeared out of place. Then, sometime around 2:30 in the afternoon on July 5th, 2026, raised voices broke the silence. Not screams, not cries for help, just an argument. One that sounded ordinary enough that no one believed they were listening to the beginning of a tragedy. The voices came from the front porch of the Baker home. A mother and her 17-year-old son. Neighbour Sean Scurry would later tell investigators that her home's Nest security camera recorded portions of the conversation. The footage didn't capture every word, but it documented enough to establish what the disagreement was about. Brandon Baker was confronting his mother, Samantha Baker. His concern was about Facebook. According to Scurry, Brandon questioned Samantha over something she had posted online. Samantha repeatedly responded that the post was just a story. She insisted it wasn't about him. The conversation continued for several minutes. From the outside, it sounded like a disagreement many families have experienced. A teenager upset about something a parent had said, a parent attempting to explain herself. Eventually, Samantha ended the discussion. She instructed Brandon to stop arguing and go mow the lawn. Reports indicate that he did exactly that. The voices stopped. The neighbourhood returned to normal. At least, that's how it appeared. Nothing about that exchange suggested investigators would later examine it as one of the final documented conversations Samantha Baker ever had. But once detectives began reconstructing the timeline, those few minutes outside the house became impossible to ignore. Why had the Facebook posts upset Brandon so deeply? And was that argument connected to what happened later that evening? Investigators acknowledged the confrontation, but they also cautioned against drawing conclusions too quickly, because another argument was still to come. To understand why the afternoon disagreement captured so much attention, it helps to understand how the Baker family appeared to everyone around them. From the outside, they looked like an ordinary family. Samantha Baker was 37 years old. She worked as a realtor. Her husband, Lance Baker, 46, served in the United States Army Reserve. Together, they shared much of their lives online. Birthdays, church gatherings, football games, family outings, holiday celebrations. Photographs showed smiling faces. Friends left supportive comments. Nothing suggested the violence that would later unfold. Samantha especially enjoyed writing about motherhood. Many of her Facebook posts focused on raising 2 teenage boys. Some were heartfelt, others were humorous. One post about football season read, "I love being a football mum. I don't love the way they smell, but hard work does stink." Another welcomed people into what she described as everyday life inside their home. "Welcome to the Baker house. We laugh, then holler, then act like nothing happened until it's time to holler and laugh again." To friends and relatives, those posts reflected the chaos familiar to many families raising teenagers. Nothing more. But as investigators and the public look back through Samantha's social media after her death, certain posts received far more attention. On National Sons Day, Samantha described Brandon as a sweet guy. In the same message, she also mentioned his mouth and attitude. She wrote that he was a calm presence until he isn't. She added that he marches to the beat of his own drum. The words reflected both affection and frustration, emotions many parents openly admit feeling. When Brandon turned 17, Samantha celebrated him again online. She called him an amazing person. She also admitted that he could make my blood boil. The combination wasn't unusual. Parents often joke about the challenges of raising teenagers while making clear how deeply they love them. But after Samantha's death, every sentence took on new meaning. People began reading those posts through the lens of what had happened. Investigators, however, were careful. They never claimed those messages explained the violence. Some of Samantha's shared parenting memes also resurfaced. One read, "Gentle parenting is for gentle children. My thugs will be handled accordingly." Another joked that parents with feral children couldn't rely on gentle parenting because they had to square up. To many parents, the memes were clearly exaggerated humour. the kind of content that circulates online every day. But neighbours later suggested Brandon had been hurt by some of the things written about him online. Whether those feelings played any role remained uncertain. Authorities never identified the Facebook posts as the motive, only that they had become part of the timeline. And timelines matter. As detectives continued piecing together July 5th, one fact became increasingly important. The argument outside the house had ended peacefully. No one called police. No one reported violence. Brandon reportedly mowed the lawn after being told to do so. For hours, life seemed to continue. The neighbourhood settled back into its quiet routine. Whatever tension had existed appeared to have passed. But appearances can be deceptive. Because sometime later that evening, another confrontation began inside the Baker home. This time, there would be no neighbours assuming it was just another family argument. And by the time anyone realised what was happening, it was already too late. The afternoon argument had ended. For several hours, nothing appeared unusual. The lawn had been mowed. The neighbourhood remained quiet. Families continued with their Sunday routines. There were no reports of disturbances, no emergency calls, no indication that the disagreement from earlier in the day would escalate into something far more devastating. Then, sometime later that evening, everything changed. According to the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office, another confrontation erupted inside the Baker home. Unlike the argument on the front porch, this one centred on a disciplinary issue. Authorities have deliberately withheld many of the details surrounding that exchange. Investigators have not publicly disclosed exactly what was said or what triggered the final escalation. What they have said is this: the disagreement intensified rapidly, and at some point during that confrontation, Brandon Baker allegedly armed himself with a kitchen knife. Investigators believe the attack began inside the home. The kitchen knife, an ordinary household object, allegedly became the weapon used against both of Brandon's parents. The assault unfolded within seconds. There was little time to react. According to investigators, Brandon allegedly began stabbing Samantha and Lance Baker during the confrontation. Exactly where each wound was inflicted has not been publicly detailed. But the injuries were severe enough that both parents immediately tried to escape. They didn't stay inside the house. They ran. The violence followed them. Instead of ending behind closed doors, the struggle spilled outside into the neighbourhood. The Baker home suddenly became the scene of desperate attempts to survive. Neighbours who had heard an ordinary argument earlier that afternoon were now hearing something entirely different. Footsteps, movement, panic, and then a scream. Neighbour Sean Scurry would later describe those moments with painful clarity. Her home's surveillance system captured audio from outside. She recalled hearing both Samantha and Lance running. Then she heard Samantha scream, just once. It was a sound that would remain with those who heard it long after the crime scene had been cleared. According to investigators, Samantha suffered multiple stab wounds. She collapsed outside the residence. Emergency responders were dispatched immediately after reports of the attack. But by the time they reached her, there was nothing they could do. 37-year-old Samantha Baker was pronounced dead. Her final moments unfolded not behind the privacy of her home's walls, but in full view of the neighbourhood she had called home. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Only hours earlier, she had been standing on the front porch having what sounded like an ordinary disagreement with her teenage son. Now, detectives were surrounding the property with crime scene tape. Neighbours watched from a distance as investigators began documenting evidence that stretched from inside the house into the yard. The attack had left a trail. One investigator would spend days reconstructing. But Samantha was not the only victim. Despite suffering severe stab wounds himself, Lance Baker was still alive. What happened next would become one of the most haunting parts of the entire case. Instead of collapsing immediately, he kept moving. Bleeding heavily, Lance fled through the neighbourhood searching for help. Witnesses later described seeing him running from house to house. He knocked on doors. He begged for assistance. Several neighbours later recalled hearing him plead that he did not want to die. Those words echoed through the quiet subdivision. The desperation in his voice left an unforgettable impression on everyone who heard it. Some of those terrifying moments were partially captured by neighbourhood surveillance cameras. Investigators later reviewed that footage as they reconstructed the sequence of events. Neighbours rushed to help as emergency services were called. Paramedics arrived and immediately recognised the severity of Lance's injuries. He was transported for emergency treatment before being airlifted to a hospital. Doctors worked to save his life. Against overwhelming odds, he survived. His survival would later provide investigators with one of the most important surviving witnesses to the attack. Exactly what Lance was able to tell investigators has not been publicly released. Authorities have withheld much of that information because the criminal case remains active. As detectives secured the scene, another discovery offered a small measure of relief in an otherwise devastating investigation. The Baker's younger son had not been home during the attack. Authorities later confirmed he was elsewhere when the violence occurred. He was spared from witnessing the killing of his mother and the attempted murder of his father. Investigators described that fact as one of the few pieces of fortune in an otherwise unimaginable tragedy. While first responders focused on the victims outside, attention quickly turned back toward the house itself because the alleged attacker was still inside. Deputies arriving at the scene learned that Baldwin Baker had returned into the residence after the attack. He did not flee the neighbourhood. He did not disappear into the surrounding woods. Instead, investigators say he barricaded himself inside the home. Then he made a call, not to a friend, not to a relative. He called 911. What happened during that emergency call, and how deputies brought the standoff to an end, would become the next critical chapter in the investigation. By the time deputies reached the Baker home, the scene was already divided into two urgent priorities. Outside, paramedics were fighting to keep Lance Baker alive. Inside, the person accused of carrying out the attack remained in the house. The danger had not yet passed. According to investigators, Baldwin Baker had gone back inside after the stabbing. He then barricaded himself within the residence. Rather than attempting to flee, he placed a call to 911. Authorities have not publicly released the full recording of that call, nor have they disclosed everything Baldwin said to the dispatcher. What they have confirmed is that deputies responded quickly and established control of the scene. The situation ended without additional violence. Baldwin was taken into custody. He was 17 years old. For detectives arriving at the scene, the investigation was only beginning. The Baker property stretched across both the inside of the home and the yard outside. Evidence markers appeared where investigators believed the struggle had unfolded. Crime scene technicians photographed every room connected to the attack. They documented blood evidence inside the residence. They photographed the exterior where Samantha Baker had collapsed. Every detail mattered. Because investigators needed to answer one question above all others: how had an ordinary family dispute escalated into homicide? Detectives began interviewing everyone connected to the events of July 5th. Neighbours described what they had seen. Others explained what they had heard. Sean Scurry provided investigators with surveillance footage from her Nest camera. That recording became an important part of the timeline. It documented the earlier afternoon argument over Samantha's Facebook posts. It also helped establish that the confrontation had ended peacefully. Hours separated that disagreement from the fatal attack. That gap became one of the central questions investigators worked to understand. As detectives reconstructed the day, they also began examining the family's online activity. Samantha Baker's Facebook page attracted widespread public attention almost immediately. Friends and strangers alike scrolled through years of family photographs, church events, football games, birthday celebrations, and parenting posts. Many struggled to reconcile those images with what had happened. Only days before her death, Samantha had continued posting about everyday family life. Nothing suggested that tragedy was only hours away. Investigators acknowledged that Baldwin had reportedly been upset about some of Samantha's social media posts. They confirmed the earlier disagreement centred on Facebook, but they were equally careful not to overstate its importance. At no point did authorities identify those posts as the official motive. Instead, detectives consistently returned to the same conclusion. The fatal violence followed a later disciplinary argument inside the home. Exactly what occurred during that confrontation has never been fully released. The timeline was becoming clearer. The motive was not. As forensic work continued, prosecutors reviewed the evidence collected by investigators. Although Brandon Baker was still legally a juvenile at 17 years old, the allegations were among the most serious possible. The Baldwin County District Attorney's Office announced that he would be charged as an adult. The charges reflected the two victims: one count of murder for the death of Samantha Baker, one count of attempted murder for the attack on Lance Baker. A judge later set Brandon's bond at $1 million. The criminal case would now move into the court system. Even as formal charges were announced, investigators continued emphasising an important point. They found no indication that the public had been targeted. This was not believed to be a random attack. There was no ongoing threat to the surrounding community. Instead, authorities described the incident as an isolated act of family violence that escalated inside a private home before spilling into the neighbourhood. That distinction mattered to residents, but it offered little comfort. Many remained shaken by what they had witnessed. Neighbours later spoke about the emotional impact of hearing Lance Baker pleading for help. Others described the lasting effect of seeing crime scene investigators working outside a home they had passed every day. The Bell Forest community had always been regarded as quiet, a place where families attended church together, watched local football games, and knew one another by name. Now it was associated with one of Alabama's most heartbreaking family homicide cases of 2026. As public interest in the case grew, discussions increasingly focused on Samantha's Facebook posts. Some readers interpreted them as harmless jokes shared by an overwhelmed parent. Others wondered whether Brandon had experienced them differently. But investigators repeatedly cautioned against reducing a complex homicide investigation to a handful of social media posts. The available evidence did not support such a simple explanation. The online disagreement was part of the story. It was not, according to investigators, the official reason for the attack. That distinction remained critical throughout the investigation. As detectives completed interviews, analysed forensic evidence, and prepared the case for prosecution, one reality became impossible to escape. The Baker family's public image had been built around ordinary moments: football practices, church services, birthday celebrations, family photographs. Those memories would now forever exist alongside crime scene photographs, surveillance footage, and court records. For those left behind, the contrast was almost impossible to comprehend. And for investigators, the work of establishing exactly what happened was far from over. As the crime scene was cleared and investigators left the Baker home, the questions did not disappear with them. They spread across the community, across social media, and eventually across the country. People wanted to understand how a family that appeared so ordinary could become the centre of such a devastating homicide investigation. The answer, investigators made clear, was not a simple one. In the days that followed, friends and relatives remembered Samantha Baker for far more than the circumstances of her death. She was a realtor, a wife, a mother, someone who celebrated ordinary milestones that many families recognise. Football practices, church gatherings, birthdays, school events. Her Facebook page reflected those moments almost daily. One photograph showed family celebrations, another captured football season, another documented time spent together at church. Looking back, there was no obvious warning contained within those images, only the routine memories of family life. Samantha often referred to Brandon affectionately. Even in posts where she joked about the challenges of raising a teenager, she made it clear that she loved her son. On his 17th birthday, she called him an amazing person. On National Sons Day, she described him as a sweet guy. She also acknowledged that parenting him could be difficult. She mentioned his mouth and attitude. She wrote that he could make my blood boil. Those comments would later be shared thousands of times online. Some readers interpreted them as ordinary parenting humour. Others questioned whether they reflected deeper family tensions. Investigators, however, never publicly concluded that the Facebook posts themselves caused the violence. The evidence released to the public did not support that claim. Throughout the investigation, law enforcement remained careful with its language. Detectives consistently described the homicide as the result of a family confrontation that escalated. They confirmed the earlier disagreement over Facebook. They confirmed the later disciplinary argument, but they stopped short of assigning a single public motive. That restraint reflected the reality of many homicide investigations. Not every question receives a complete public answer. Sometimes the available evidence explains what happened. It does not fully explain why. Lance Baker's survival became another defining part of the case. Despite suffering multiple stab wounds, he lived. His recovery represented one of the few moments of hope in an otherwise overwhelming tragedy. Authorities have released very little about his medical treatment or recovery, choosing instead to protect the integrity of the ongoing criminal proceedings and the family's privacy. For investigators, however, his survival meant that one victim could speak for himself. What information he provided has not been publicly disclosed. The Baker's younger son also faced a future permanently altered by events he did not witness. Authorities confirmed that he was away from the home when the attack occurred. That absence spared him from seeing the violence unfold. It did not spare him from its consequences. In a single evening, he lost his mother. His father was critically injured, and his older brother was taken into custody, accused of killing one parent and attempting to kill the other. It was a reality almost impossible to comprehend. The legal process now moves forward in the courts. Brandon Baker has been charged as an adult with murder in Samantha Baker's death and attempted murder for the attack on Lance Baker. A judge set his bond at $1 million. As with every criminal case, those charges remain allegations until proven in court. Future proceedings will determine how the evidence is presented, challenged, and ultimately judged under the law. For the people of the Belforest community, the memories are far less procedural. Many still remember hearing what they believe was nothing more than an ordinary family disagreement. Some remember the single scream that followed later that evening. Others remember Lance Baker knocking on doors, bleeding and pleading for help. Those moments transformed a quiet neighbourhood forever. The sounds captured by security cameras became part of the investigative record. The memories carried by neighbours became part of the community's history. Cases involving family violence often leave behind questions that extend beyond the courtroom. Could anyone have recognised warning signs? Was there anything that might have changed the outcome? Investigators can establish timelines. Forensic evidence can explain movements. Witnesses can describe what they saw and heard. But evidence cannot always answer the questions people ask long after the investigation ends. Those answers sometimes remain deeply personal, known only to the individuals who lived inside the home. Perhaps that is why this case continues to resonate, not because it involves strangers, not because it unfolded in a crowded public place, but because it began where people expect to feel safest, inside a family home. Only hours before the attack, Samantha Baker's social media reflected the ordinary rhythms of everyday life. A mother celebrating her family, joking about parenthood, and looking toward the future. By the end of that same day, investigators were documenting a homicide scene. The contrast remains the most haunting part of the case. A family known for football games, church gatherings, and shared photographs became the focus of a murder investigation, and a quiet Alabama neighbourhood was left with a memory that would not fade. For those who continue to follow the case, the lasting lesson is not found in a Facebook post or a courtroom filing. It is found in the painful reminder that some of the deepest tragedies unfold behind doors that, from the outside, appear completely ordinary.